go, sir.
All right, I will call the meeting to order at 7 o'clock. And I'm going to jump over board norms. Changes to the agenda. We're actually, I'm sorry, what was that? You can't hear me? I'm sorry. I will speak louder. I'll try to. So moving on to changes to the agenda, we're actually going to look to appoint or to make a rep here, so we'll add that. Correspondence, don't think we had anything. And members of the public, you'll have plenty of opportunity to speak tonight. So we will we'll get to that. It's basically a one-item agenda other than appointing, and that was really it. So let's start with the appointment first before we jump into it.
I make a motion to appoint Ann Connor to the board and to fill out the rest of the term of the Jamaica
Elected official.
official.
I'll second that.
Great. Any discussion? Sir?
Does that only go until the election period, so the rest of this year?
Goes to the next Jamaica election,
Which would be
which
town
is
meeting.
scheduled for town meeting, March 1st.
That's the same question I had.
Two.
Great. Any other discussion? All right, seeing none. And actually, yeah, who do we have on? Do we have anybody on?
We do not have a board member on.
We do not. Okay. Around the table then. Can we just,
Do you want me
Do
to
it.
step out?
no.
It's okay.
Can we just do a hand vote then? Or
Step first.
if nobody else?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All those in favor, hands up. All right, seeing none opposed, motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Welcome in.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to old business, long-term planning committee. Been very, very hard at work, and I want to hand it over to Drew and his team to kind of talk about what's happened over the last 2 weeks, what they've gotten for survey results, and where we go from here.
Excellent. So we thank everybody for putting in your comments. We had 99 responses, some coming in today, so we've just been kind of reviewing those. And what we've done is we've kind of gone through those questions. We've come up with some themes. We're going to try to address the themes that we identified. And then when we're done with that, we're going to ask the board to go ahead and ask any specific questions that we need to cover. So rather than spending what would be the rest of the night going question by question, since most of them overlap, we're going to go ahead and just present the information that we think will answer your questions as best we can, and then we'll let the board kind of query us a little bit after that. I guess it's important to understand that there are some questions we do not have answers to, and we quite intentionally don't have answers to. And as we go through the rest of the discussion tonight, one of the questions that we do not have answers to is how much is this going to cost? And that's for good reason. We have to know what we're asking the administration to put a price on before we can actually go through that exercise. So if this is the direction the board wants to go, the administration is excited to provide us with that information. But we've intentionally left the price tag component out of this discussion at this point. And I guess one of the kind of the big questions that we got from the public was, what is the problem that you guys are trying to solve? And I think the members of the board have been working on kind of this challenging situation for a long time, where we've been facing declining student enrollment. We've been up against a education funding formula that is not favorable towards our small school district. We've been looking at programs and having to make difficult decisions about reducing programs for students because of the kind of ever-increasing tax burden. And that's what brought this kind of this discussion, that's what brought this committee together, to kind of look at this, where we were as a district and where we could be in the future. So that's kind of what the problem we're trying to address. We're trying to make sure that our students get the individualized learning that we promised them. We want to make sure that our taxpayers are getting value for the dollars they're spending. So we understand that the education funding formula is not going to be favorable to our little district. And the committee spent a lot of time looking at how that money is affecting our students. And really, we wanted to focus on making sure that if our education is going to be expensive, let's make sure our kids are getting the best possible education, the best individualized education, the most immersive education they can get, so that every student leaving our school district has a life-changing experience. We want them to leave here with a love of learning. We want them to leave our school district with the same passion we heard from the students that had our Journey East program. So that's kind of where we ended up. That's kind of the overall goal. We determined that the best way to do that would be to have a single campus. By bringing all of our students together, we can create certain opportunities that we cannot while our students are separate. Some people noticed in our proposal that not everybody is on one campus. Our student enrollment has declined, but it's not declined enough so that everybody fits in one building. So our centralized campus model is based around Townsend being our centralized focused campus. There is a street between our two buildings, but we believe that the administration, the teachers can make that one campus model work by using the crosswalk. So we're very confident in this approach. We spoke to our educators about what was important to them, and the ability to collaborate between grade levels was important. So we took that into consideration. We looked at the ability of families and not kind of spreading them out as much as some of the other proposals as being important to us. So all those things together we looked at, and this is where our proposal kind of ended. And now,
So I just wanted to take a couple of minutes to sort of elaborate how we got to this as what we think is the best choice. And part of that was, as Drew said, going through all of the recommendations that have been made over the last many years to the board, all of the responses that have come in over those many years about all of those different options from the public. And then looking at not just what those options were, but what about them was successful. And then trying to figure out how we can move forward with the best possible education for all of our students. So a couple of the things that I wanted to talk about were, so I'm sure everybody remembers a couple of years ago, there was a proposal about doing basically a grade banding system. That went over terribly, as I'm sure everybody remembers. There was a lot of good in that. There was a lot of bad in that. In terms of transportation, there was a lot of issues. So I feel like, and I think we all agree on the long-term planning committee, that this proposal brings a lot of the benefit of grade banding, which includes having 2 classrooms for every grade. So now there's a lot more social opportunities for every student. There's more opportunities to collaborate between classrooms, both for students and for teachers. Now you can have, instead of say 3 or 4 skills block groups per grade, now you can have like 6 or 8. So there's a better chance for individualized learning to happen. So these things that happen with grade banding are good things. This proposal takes the best of that and then also kind of fixes some of the problems. So having many kids in different schools is hard for families. And there was a lot of concern about people having to have, a kid in Jamaica and a kid in Townsend and a kid in Newfane. And how am I supposed to do this? Now I have 3 kids in 3 schools. Well, now we have a one campus option. And that is one drop off and one pickup. It's a lot easier to have one campus when you have multiple kids in the system. Yes, there is still an early ed campus because unfortunately we just can't possibly fit everybody right now. So the good thing about having an early ed campus is that we as a board have talked a lot in the past about the benefit of play-based learning, especially in the younger grades. And allowing the kindergartners to continue from preschool 3 years old, 4 years old, into kindergarten at 5 and 6, to allow them to continue in that play-based environment for as long as possible, it becomes an easier model to have that play-based education for early ed. So that's a definite benefit to combining the kindergartners in this early ed center. Another thing that we had talked about with the grade banding option that was really wonderful was having all of the specialized teachers, so the speech therapists, et cetera, spend less of their days driving around within the district and more of their hours actually serving children. So we're actually going to get more service from all of our specialists by having one campus. Obviously, the equity of education across towns would no longer be an issue when we have one campus. So one of the downfalls, as I said, was transportation previously. Having one campus addresses that issue. Another possible, what we said was a con of that grade banding model was having the additional transitions. So a student transitions from a K1-2 into a 3-4-5 building, into a 6-7-8, into a 9-12. We are focusing as much of our attention in making it feel like one campus as possible. So there would really be a transition from an early ed environment into our campus of learning. So that would be, yes, there would still eventually be a transition between buildings, but when you're already collaborating, walking across the street doesn't feel nearly as large of a transition as going to a whole new town. And another thing that has come up a lot in previous feedback is a lot of concern from the community about losing a school building as a community center. So part of our vision is to increase community involvement in our schools, not decrease. And so while there may not be an everyday, your kid, you live in Newfane, but your kid goes to school in Townsend, there's actually going to, with this vision, be more opportunity for community members to be involved in the school through this immersive learning center. So I think we all agree that there's actually more opportunities for communities to be involved in the education of their kids. Not to mention the additional ability to have actual adult learning opportunities that can happen within this facility. Another thing that we had talked about that we're currently doing that we think is awesome is all of the proficiency-based graduation requirements and project-based learning. So by having an immersive learning center, we're actually providing a framework for these projects to occur. We're not just handing the ability to do this to students. We're saying, let's show you some things and let's talk about how these experiences affect you. And I think we all really feel strongly that immersive opportunities such as the Journey East, we've heard for years now, but especially lately, how important that is and how life-changing that program can be. Unfortunately, that program currently serves, I think, 15 to 20 kids, and we think that every student should have that kind of fully immersed opportunity that they can feel passionate about. Because it is life-changing, and it does instill lifelong passion for learning. So if we want our students to have that passion, we need to do more than we're doing. Just want to make sure I kind of got all my points. I had a lot to say. So yeah, I think that there's a lot that has gone into this conversation about how we got to where we got. And I think it's hard for us to, having put so much time and had so many conversations, to really get all of this out concisely. But I think we all really feel strongly that every student deserves to feel passionate about their learning, and every student should have the opportunity to do real hands-on learning and have real life experiences, not only a handful of our students. I think Drew was going to talk a little bit more about what immersive learning is.
Yes, I will. Okay with you. So before I get to that, I think we got a bunch of questions about transportation. And we did start this let's see, we started it, but in our discussion, we did take transportation into consideration. In fact, we had the opportunity to have a giant map made up with all the transportation routes. We looked at distances, we looked at bus transportation. And we could spend the next 2 hours going over the details that we learned about our transportation system. But I can tell you for certain that we did look at that, and if the board really wants to dig into the details, we have an entire map the size of this table with all of our transportation routes and stuff laid out, because we did look at that and how long these kids would be on buses and so on and so forth. The thing about transportation is everybody in our district is eventually going to be in Townsend under our current structure. There was some discussion about, hey, we don't really want high school kids and elementary school kids on the same buses. That happens now every single day, and it has been for I think ever. I don't know how long it's been, but certainly since I was in school here, more than a few years ago. So from the transportation side of it, again, we looked at the possibility, or the bus routes, we looked at the rides, we looked at the logistics of creating that transportation network, and we've got a pretty good idea as to how that would work, but I don't know that hashing out bus routes is the right thing to do right now. But there was a lot of questions about that, so I want to make sure we highlighted that it is something that we have more detail on, but it's probably not the best use of our time tonight. And I wanted to highlight the efficiency of having access to our specialists, our nurses, our music teachers, our PE teachers, because they're going to be in the building all the time. So by having this single campus model, your student has access to a nurse every day. And especially given our current circumstances, I think that's a very valuable asset that we're going to be gaining. And other efficiencies as far as especially those specialists coming in. So what is immersive learning? That was the most popular question on our survey. And I will say that we were intentionally vague at the last meeting. We really wanted you guys to think about this. We wanted the questions to come out, and let me see if I can help explain it to you. And I guess this may sound a little corny, but close your eyes for a minute and picture that you're a student. And picture you're walking into a room right now, and in that room, there are desks in the center of the room. And in the front of the room is a giant whiteboard. You look to the left, and there's a poster. You look to the right, and there's another poster. And in that room, we're going to teach you about science. Now take the same kid and have them walk into a room. And in the center of that room, there are tables. But all the way around that room are living things. All the way around that room are actual plants, animals, geology. In that room, you have people that are extremely passionate, like our Journey East instructor is about Journey East, but extremely passionate about environmental science and studies, and their ability to bring that to children in an environment where they're completely engaged. Utilizing the resources that we have currently in our district, we believe there is opportunities for several topics. We have some rough framework, but again, it's part of the discussion moving forward. Environmental studies being one, cultural studies, like our Journey East program being another. Technology and science, robotics could be a third. Where when you're in that space, when you're in that classroom, the indoor space is something you can touch, something you can smell. We're telling our kids not to taste things, especially in the COVID world. But we want you to have that full sensory experience. And we want that to be available to every one of our students. The rough model we're looking at is a day, a month for the younger kids, where they can get exposed. So it's more like a field trip for the first graders or the second graders, where they would come to school, they would then go to our immersive center, and they would get to feel and smell what it's like to be in that room. The next month, they may go to a different immersion center where they can learn about cultural studies and kind of broaden their knowledge. We'd be asking our teachers to incorporate this into their curriculum. So we're going to be asking a lot of our staff, similar to the way they do now with some of our programs, like Nature's Classroom and Camp Keewaydin, where they incorporate that into the curriculum. As we move through the grades, as they become a little bit older, we would increase the we'd increase in the 6th to the 8th grade, where we would send them to that entire immersion center for an entire week, where they would start to kind of get real exposure. So rather than just a day, now we're going to let you do technology or let you do environmental science for a week as part of a program. Much like Starbase was such an important program to many of our kids, the highlight of their year because of that special program. But we'd be able to offer that at our campus. As you start getting beyond 10th grade, this is where those experiences they had in the younger grades will allow them to make choices about their education. That may get them the opportunity to say, I'd like to spend an entire semester, maybe in my junior, maybe in my senior year, learning about cultural studies. Or I would like to be immersed in environmental science, healthcare, robotics, or some sort of STEM program, depending on how we decide to lay it out. So it gives these students the exposure, it allows students choices, and we all sat and we certainly heard from our administration as to the amount of work. We acknowledge it is a ton of work for our administrators and our teachers to incorporate this curriculum into what you already do. We believe it's worth it. We believe having students that walk out of our education system with life-changing experiences is worth the investment. This board heard from our Journey East students about how impactful that was. And it saddens me that not every student gets that opportunity. If you're not interested in China, what is the exciting, what is the moving component of our education system right now? We're lacking that. So this is a program that every student would pick their path. Every student would then be able to have that engagement and that excitement. How'd I do?
Awesome.
All right. So, does anybody else want to talk about 5th grade? All right.
We looked at, we know the concerns, we see the responses. People, they on the grade banding. 5th graders do not fit in the middle school. We understand that, but we cannot tear down and build one central campus within a year or two. We need time. We need money. And that ain't gonna just pop up here tomorrow or the next day. So we thought best of how we could make the centralized campus with what we got. And this is what we came up with. And I know there was some safety concerns about the fifth graders being in with the older kids, but with technological advances, key cards, we will ensure the safety of the younger ones from the older ones.
Well, keep in mind, there's many schools that are K through 12. This is nothing new.
Yeah,
So we're not creating something that doesn't exist. This already exists.
yeah, we're not reinventing the wheel. It's out there. Other schools, Cabot,
Successfully do this.
successfully does it. We just got to be mindful. We have policies in place and ensure the safety of this. And if they're not being properly enforced, we will make corrections to that.
We also have faith in our
Yeah.
middle and high school administration to make sure that this happens.
We did not go in this blindly, thinking, oh yeah, we'll just throw these kids into it. No. But to achieve what we're looking for, we need to make some minor sacrifices, maybe major sacrifices.
So the one campus model has all of these students. So we're not isolating, we're not siloing our students to a single building. Our students are part of the West River Education District, and to some extent it happens now. Where do the young basketball players play? You know, where do we play our soccer games? Where do we do our theater presentations and our concerts? So in some ways we're already doing this. We're already mixing our younger and our older kids. In our model, we have a single campus. We're one education district, and all of our kids are coming together. And we hope that the kids that are doing pottery at the elementary school can use the kilns at the high school. We hope that the gymnasiums that are available at the high school can better serve our elementary school kids. And we expect that collaboration, that road between our two buildings does not break up our campus. The road between the two buildings is crossed every day by staff. And I think the students will quickly learn that it is one campus, and that transition from fourth grade in the Townsend, formerly known as building, to Leland and Gray, formerly known as building, will be natural because there is no mystery. We have one campus and fluid children between the two buildings.
And there is also some definite benefit to having great role models. And I think that we have some really great role models. I don't think it's necessarily always scary. I think that really amazing collaboration is possible between younger, and I personally hope that that our high school students are also able to interact with our very young students. I would love for our high school students to be able to be great role models to our first and second graders as well.
Yeah.
Big brothers, big
We do
sisters.
already have that in some ways. Soccer, we have the older high school students teaching the younger students how to play. We have volunteers, I don't know if they're volunteers, I think so, at Laughter. So it does already exist to some extent.
All right, I think we've got all of our comments. So, Mr. Chair, we'd like to turn it back over to you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. That was fantastic. Really deep thinking on this. I just wanted to say, hopefully, one important thing in the fact that you only have one plan. I don't want people to think of it as just having one plan. As you were saying, this was distilled down from all of the recommendations and plans that we have received over the years and over the last 4, 5, 6 months. You very thoughtfully disseminated all of that and came up with this plan. So really appreciate that. So here is what we are going to do. We're going to have the board first ask any questions that they have. And when we exhaust that, we'll turn it over to the public. And just for the public, if we could ask one question per person until we kind of have everybody satisfied, and then we can move on to the next person. Mike here will be monitoring that. But first of all, let's start with our board. Who would like to start with the board? Oh, I'm sorry.
Emily's on the.
Oh. Hi, Emily.
Hey, Al, sorry I'm late. I was in a meeting and couldn't drive again up there in time, so I thought I'd join this way. Thank you.
You bet. No problem. All right, so who would like to kick us off?
I just have one concern. And I understand your premise of less transition and the two buildings being the main campus. My question is, we just approved grant money to have the playground across the street all refitted, and I'm sure most of that is gonna be smaller kid stuff. There. Down at Newbrook, you have the baseball field, soccer field, you have the sliders, the climbers, there's a rock wall, all that stuff that all the little kids can't do, and you want to put them in that building. So now what we're doing is it just feels like it's a waste of the resources we have already, is my only concern.
So we actually had a lengthy discussion. We actually even did site visits and looked at especially play equipment. In case you don't know, Lindsay really likes play-based learning.
Maybe you haven't heard that.
So we look at that equipment, and there certainly is some, room where things probably would need to be moved or relocated. I don't think we should use that or have that as a reason to hold back from all the benefits we get by moving to a single campus. One of our concerns is the amount of play space and what the play space does look like here in the central campus in Townsend. And that was we spent many hours discussing, what does that play space look like? How can we improve that play space to make it more like what is available in Newfane? But we felt that whatever the expense would be to relocate, to move, shuffle that equipment around, would be insignificant compared to the gains we're going to receive by moving these kids together as far as their education goes.
Well, you can't shuffle that equipment down there over to Townsend Elementary, because you can't put it on the common.
Correct.
So it's gonna have to come on this campus. And where are you gonna put it on this campus? We just used up the space for the ropes course.
I think there's, from a footprint perspective, I think there's opportunities over at the current building. There's some available space over there that we looked at. Again, if you guys are in favor of kind of really digging into it more, then we could certainly dig into the details of what space, like where do the property boundaries land.
I think that would be a good idea.
There's definitely more available space.
There would be options,
But
but we can't go any further.
right, unless the board really wants us to
Yeah.
dig into that. But it's definitely something that we looked at and identified as a challenge.
I got the tape measure out. I started taking measurements because I was skeptical.
Don't be up on my in-laws property.
Yeah, I know. Oh, believe me, I know. Property line issues. Really, I was going in it skeptical because, I really sometimes have issues with the kids playing on the common. And, but if you do it right, if you get somebody who really knows how to utilize space, that may not be me, but somebody out there that knows how to utilize space, we could make things happen. And it could be still wonderful and great. And the kids could get more out of it. But, and there might be other options that we can look at. Just can't go into them at this time because, you kind of put the cart before the horse. So, if you guys are really interested in this, we will look into these more and put the time in. The centralized campus, like I said, we're years out from building one humongous thing. The money's not there, the land is not there. And I just, and when we do that big, huge campus, I want to do it right the first time. Do all the expansions, plans ahead, or de-expansions, whatever. I want to do it right the first time. Not have to go back and renovate. So I think we can make the playground thing work. I really do. And we can get people would volunteer. Bring the community together. If it's about money, we can maybe get some volunteers that would be willing to do that. We're part of a bigger community now. Not
That's how that one got built down there.
That's right. But now you can add Jamaica, Townsend. It'd be nice to bring Wyndham back into the fold. We're trying to create something big. We've been forced together. Pretty much like a bad marriage, we've been forced together. Well, we got to make it work because there's no divorce.
What do you got for the next one?
Yes.
That's
Mike?
Yeah, all right. So, I mean, it's definitely an interesting concept. And, as a committee, this isn't easy, right? So you got 4 people working in isolation trying to come up with something. But I've been on this board long enough now. We have talked about all these other scenarios. So for me, I guess my first metric is, does it improve the educational product that we're giving our kids? Case can be made. You guys have made a good case for that. So then the second metric for me is, can we do this at a taxpayer-friendly price? Acknowledging that you haven't put numbers down yet. Right now, we're in a unique situation. There's ESSER money around. So if this was a way we wanted to go, if we can get grant money that we don't have to pay back, I think we all can figure that out. So then I do have some concerns about, how the community at large feels about this. But I went back and I looked at our meetings from last year, right? And I looked at Lori's graph and I saw, if we go out 3 or 4 years, we're down another 20 kids. So that is the real problem, is declining enrollment. And, even if we right-size the model for right now, 5 years, 10 years down the road, we could be right back into, depending on Montpelier does, excess spending and all of that stuff. And it's not really fair to us, our taxpayers, or our kids. So I want to know more. I'm definitely not on one side or the other, but the only way we can, I guess we kind of have to answer more questions before we can figure out if this is viable or not. But I do think that there is an opportunity with the ESSER money. And I do have another question. I wonder how many kids really want to make that trip up. But if that center is as immersive and as good as it could be, then I think the kids would want to go there. But I don't have any information on that either way. And I did also wonder about breaking up the bands. But I'll say it. I was somebody I wasn't for the 6th grade move. My son completed 6th grade in LNG. It was fine. It was great. So, I don't have that worry, but I can appreciate that people who have kids coming in might not have that same point of view yet. So, that's all for me.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay.
Yeah, please.
So, obviously the money we need an answer to. Is there another specific question you want us to get an answer to for you? So if board members have I got this burning question, we will find you an answer. So, I'll get you the playground measurement stuff, so we can have that for you.
I'll get back to you on that.
Okay.
Anything, Joe?
More of a procedural question than anything else. I mean, just the way that this has been discussed and some of the answers to the questions and things, this almost seems like it needs to be a staged process. Like as you dig in and get more research, it just raises more questions. And
after 2 presentations on this, we're down at the granular level about what about a playground, and we're still way up at the 10,000 foot level. But I understand from the committee's viewpoint that this is an intense undertaking of data gathering and studying and discussing. So you almost want to like say, okay, we'll continue to dig into this deeper, but we need the assurance that we're okay right now. That, you know, you like this direction, please continue this direction and flesh it out. But you don't want to get to the point where it's like, oh, no. You know?
Yeah.
It's like a targeted transition, you know? Is that sort of how you're thinking in laying this out?
Yeah.
So is that what we're thinking? And I should have mentioned this. So before we go further, we want to make sure that the board likes the direction we're going. If you guys are like, no way, don't want it, then we don't want to waste the administration's time. We don't want to, spend money we don't need to spend in order to get some of these details where we're actually to hire some people to get us that super fine granular information. We can't come up with those answers. Some of those things are going to cost us a little bit of money to find out. We're going to have to hire people.
Right.
But yeah, so what we would like to do is get through this meeting, write down whatever questions you guys have. If there's something to kind of stick it in your head, like, hey, I really need that in order to decide what's the direction, then we'll go back, we'll get that information. And certainly after the public has their chance to ask questions, if there's anything that's like burning, and then at our next board meeting, we're going to ask you guys to give us a direction. Do you want us to keep going, or do you want us to like turn around and go back? Because I don't think it's fair to our administration or our staff to go through these exercises if we have no intention. We've done this like how many times? Where we keep asking. So I don't think it's fair for us, and that's why we haven't asked them. Because I don't think it's fair to ask them to go through the entire exercise of building a staffing model for an education plan that we have no intention of moving forward with. It's a waste of their time. It causes staff anxiety, increases likely the turnover. We all know what that does.
We've seen it in the responses where some people are like, well, which teachers are going to get fired and which teachers are going there?
But without that,
and we're like,
without
we're not
that,
even.
the board can't really hone in either, because it's such a crucial piece.
But if you guys like the idea, then we have no problem tasking Bill.
Yeah.
After September 13th.
After September 13th, with getting us that number, so we can't really get into it. We just didn't want
Yeah, you don't bog down on that now.
until you guys were, the whole group is.
We've put a lot into distilling things to this point, and it takes a little bit for us to get all of our thoughts out there to everybody so that you can understand what this is and what it means. If it seems like it's going in the right direction, if it seems like it's going in the direction that you would like our district to go in, then we would love to keep moving forward with it. If not, then we'll know. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're too invested right now. Just to let you know that we've sunk. The 4 of us have really.
Well, you can tell it's been a lot of work done.
Yeah.
We all started from
It
very,
will be a
very
big
different
letdown
places.
if we don't go somewhere with something. It's got to that point where
All right, so that definitely answers my question.
all feed in.
And adding to that now, I will tell you, I have not heard a single negative thing out of this proposal. I think you're going in absolutely the right direction. The idea that kids could start exploring something they're passionate about at a young age and continue to change, explore whatever, that passion, I think you get so much more engagement and so much more value out of that. I mean, the kids that figure out what they want or what really drives them and they have a goal and they work towards it, see, they kind of win the game of education versus the ones who, I go to class every day, I do my stuff, nothing really excites me, yeah, school sucks, I just go.
Maybe a grab.
I don't know what I'm going to do when I get out of school because I guess I'll get a job or, whatever. Versus the kid who says, I'm going to go start this business or I'm going to go to college or I'm going to, go to this trade school or whatever. They come out with an idea and because they found something that
And to
Speaks
be
to the-
able to have, sorry, I just can't not say things. To be able to have their different experiences where maybe you didn't think you were interested in STEM, but because you were exposed to it in that hands-on way, maybe come to find out you think robotics is so cool, and now you're actually really interested in that. When before you were like, you know, I'm going to be an
Absolutely.
English teacher, which is also great, but until you had that experience, it's something so vastly different. You know, you need to be able to have these experiences, and the more the better.
Agreed.
Buddy.
So I have to play the new kid card because I don't know what your curriculum development resources are, but do you have the staffing resources to design the links between the immersive learning and the classroom curriculum?
That's a Bill question.
That's a Bill question.
I believe we do.
I think
My answer would be,
too.
if we don't have them now, we certainly would if we put that in place. How'd I do, Bill? Playing Bill.
If the path was continued, that would be a question that the board would need to know.
We're very
Yeah,
confident.
that's
that
not a
we can
good
create.
thing.
Just a comment. Okay, I just have one thing. So I love the path that you're heading on. It all sounds great, personalized learning, immersive learning. And so we are talking about the upcoming budget. So I'm just trying to think logistically and timing wise, is it possible to vet out everything that we're going to hear from the public very shortly in terms of questions? And is there any way potentially to slice it up into maybe doing the banding now, and then with the immersive learning, having time to do the build out? What is it going to look like and all that? That just seems to be something that may take more time. But I don't know. Bill, do you have any thoughts on in terms of ability to turn around on?
So once the board decides on a direction, it's going to take resources and time and a plan. But money, as you, and, well, resources. And so it depends on the time and the resources are factors that would affect each other. If you want it done in a certain amount of time, there's going to be a certain amount of investment necessary. If you do it on a different timeline, there might be less investment necessary. So I think it's dependent on the timeline for what the board would be looking for as you got to know. But we could certainly give you, if you did it on this timeline, it could look like this, and this would be the necessary investment. If you did it on this timeline, it would look like this, it would be this necessary investment. So I think that is it's an open question that can be delivered multiple solutions.
Okay, great.
But until, kind of like the opening salvo, until you guys are all together, that's some deep work, right? So,
Right.
but I would say, yeah, it's possible. It's just different. If it's really fast, it's going to take more money, more resources, but it would be up and running soon. If it takes more time, it might take less resources. You're going to have professional development, and there's a ton of stuff. I don't want all of that to get in the way of kind of your conceptual thinking, because once you guys commit to something, then we can start working to get you those answers.
So, okay, let me boil that down. He said, no problem, he'll get it done. That's what he actually just said. And he's been telling us that all summer long, whatever we come up with, no problem. Easy
Yeah.
day.
No, that's great. I mean, you folks have put so much time and effort into this. I'd hate for us to get to the almost the goal line and not have it be, thoughtfully done, especially with budget season coming up. Just want to make sure that everybody has the ability to ask questions that they want, and that we get, as you're all working towards the best possible product that we possibly can get for our kids.
Yeah,
Mike,
so
sorry.
my comment, well, it's two quick comments. One is, I know you guys talked about STEM, but I think computer coding is definitely part of that. And that's something that we can teach our kids and they can have value, and as adults can give value back to our Vermont communities. But then, you know, if we hypothetically did this, I'm wondering if, all right, we know we lose kids, and I would suspect that most of these families move out of state. But do we know that, like, have we ever looked at where the kids are really going, right? You know, so like, are we losing them just to neighboring districts? Because then if we build something like this, then we become more attractive. So that's just my comment is, you know, do we know why we're losing the kids? If they're out of state, there's nothing we can do. But if they're just moving 2 towns over because there's a better school, this might help us.
I personally believe that if we do this, we will be very attractive to everybody. I think that there is a very good chance. Do I have some data to back this up? No, but I've talked to a lot of people. I think that there is a very good chance that we end up with bringing people into our
Tuition
district.
students.
Whether that means people are moving here because this is an amazing educational experience and they want their kids to be a part of it, or they're tuitioning kids into our district because this is an amazing educational experience.
I'm having a flashback.
So we did look at a couple pieces of data. One is our Wardsboro group and what has happened over time. So those kids, as they get through the elementary program there, used to be the majority of them came here. Now almost none of them come here. So we did look at that. And we also looked at some pre-existing data from Jamaica about students that have moved not out of state, but simply across the line. So they have educational opportunities at Burnberg.
Okay.
So we did look at 2. Again, are they scientific? Can we say directly there because of the education? No, maybe there's something else, but there's definitely been a clear trend of students from Mooresboro shifting, and Jamaica certainly has the data showing families moving across the border to the Londonderry, Wimbledon side. And that's all real.
You need a quote. Cut that down real short, but just say, if you build it, they will come.
Those dreams are here.
Field of Dreams, Ken?
There you go.
All right.
Emily's looking like she's got-
Emily, do you have a question? Comment? Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Thank you. No, it's fine. I know how to interrupt you. First, I want to just say thanks for all that. This is really great, thorough. And as I'm sitting here listening to everybody, I reflect back on there's very little, as much as I appreciate what all the work that's gone into it and the creativity that's come out of it. It really is what we've been saying for so long, right? I mean, I've been hearing the same thing over and over again. So the vast majority of everything I've heard, I agree with. I think we would be short-sighted to not pursue this to see whether it can work for us. I think the challenge around the demographics that we're facing, and they've all been described. I don't need to go back into anything anyone just said, but I think we need to make our school more competitive in the environment that we're operating in. And we've never had ourselves in this position before, but we are now, and Drew just described it pretty clearly. And I would add Dover to that because, you know, at some point, you know, earlier we lost many more Dover students. Dover students used to come not in huge numbers, but certainly to Leland, right? And that hasn't happened in recent years either. So the competition is great out there, but we have to serve the children that are in our communities. And I want to make sure that we're providing the best education possible for them. And I think this is a path that that might work. So I applaud the work that's done, and I appreciated the question, Al, about the timeline and the funding. I think if the will is there and we see something that can meet the needs, we can make it happen. We will make it happen. We need to make it happen for our kids and our communities and our families. So thanks.
Thanks, Emily. All right. Anything else from us before we turn it over to the public? No. All right.
Al, could you just ask if people on Zoom could they put up the hand?
Yes, for anybody out there in Zoom land, if you just want to go ahead and put up your hand, we'll acknowledge you. And have a question already? Patty?
I have a comment. This is just an amazing opportunity for us. I think it will make us stand out as a wonderful learning center. And the ideas about the two buildings and the campus, and I think about, you can have uniforms that are, for sports, and have, a sports team is called the blah, blah, blahs, and it's for the elementary too. I mean, there's just so many cool things you can do. And I have a concern about getting involved with the grade banding I wouldn't want that to take away from the work that's for this particular thing, the Immersive program. And I did some research today, and I came up with this thing that someone said. I can't read it without my glasses. They said, when you look at educating, it's not necessarily the grade configuration. It's what you're doing in the classroom that is developmentally appropriate. And that's so true. That's the most important thing, not who's where and who's with who. It's what you're doing in the classroom, to me. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and I guess we didn't mention it tonight, but I think it's really important that the public understand and the board knows. We've been looking for models. We plan to borrow as much good content from people that are successful at this as we possibly can. So we're not asking for like a complete zero to build up. And the administration's provided us with lots of resources about models that we could be using in places that are doing similar things. So there, and I know Patty was present during some of our meetings. We were discussing some of those opportunities. So there are some benchmarks out there that we can use.
Oh, sorry. You pointed me in the right direction.
Renee.
It was Renee. Okay, sorry. Renee, and then, sorry.
Hi, thanks. I just was curious because I work at Townsend currently, and I know we are like over max capacity with staff. So I was just curious if you've run any numbers as far as like projected students and staff. Would it be able to fit in the building?
So
Good question.
So yes, and that's why we broke the area of the students where we did. In an ideal world, we would have had all of the students between the two buildings, but that's not possible because of the capacities. So we did look at those numbers and ran those through the administration as to what the building's capacities are. And in this configuration, we would be well within the building's capacity.
With staff as well?
Yes, for staff and
Like all the support staff and everything? Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
Sorry, go ahead.
Patty and I have come to most of these meetings that the long-term planning committee has had. And I think we have come away from this both absolutely thrilled with what they have done. And we need to do something more for our students. And yes, in Jamaica, we are seeing many students, families who are leaving Jamaica and going just over the border. It's great, and I don't know how anyone cannot be excited about this. So thank you, guys.
Thank you. Go ahead, Chris.
Hi. So I have a few things, but I'll only start with one. I am the fifth grade teacher, one of them. I'm really, so a couple of years ago when you decided to move the sixth grade over, I was really saddened, but it made sense because of banding. I really struggle with putting fifth graders here and moving them away, even though they're across the street or whatever, they are going to be more isolated because you're gonna have to take really good care of them. I also did some research. Nowhere in the southern part of Vermont has fifth grade in the middle school. There are schools that have pre-K-12, but there's always separate wings. So you have a pre-K wing, you have different things. Leland and Gray can't offer that. That's my biggest concern as an educator, is putting fifth graders over here. It doesn't make sense. If you can figure out how to put them all in one building, I just really struggle with them at Leland and Gray. It's, like I said, sixth grade, I was sad. I taught sixth grade for a long time. I was really sad to see them go. It made sense because it's a 6-8 band. Common Core is a 4-5 band. Yes, it doesn't matter what the band is, it depends on how you teach, but you're taking those kids away from that opportunity to be enriched with those kinds of with them. They're not going to be able to do it as much in a middle school setting.
Thanks, Chris. Yes, in the back.
I have to agree too.
I'm sorry,
with
can
fifth
you get your
grade.
name?
Ryan.
Thank you.
So I do have to agree too with the fifth grade. I did put in the comments, has it been considered to use Newbrook as K through 2 and Townsend as 3 through 5? The issue I'm having with, you're putting pre-K to K, so you're only doing 4 ages per se in Newbrook and Townsend. So to me, putting a pre-K, I mean, the trust in public school systems is going down. As for enrollment in public school, people are choosing to homeschool, people are choosing different methods of teaching their kids. So you're entrusting a parent to put their child through a public school system that they may not fully trust at the age of 3. And we do have a pretty viable pre-K in Brookline. So you would essentially be running that business out of town, because then they're only doing 0 through 3. And then you're still putting pre-K 3-year-olds with 6-year-olds, so you're still getting this huge age, I guess, gap. I don't know if that was a consideration to do 3 grades in one, 3 grades in the other. I mean, I was against this. I didn't like the 6th grade either, but again, I think it makes sense having 6 through 8 in middle school. It's how I grew up with all the schools. But to put 5th grade here, I think it's not about their safety. I think overall the maturity level and just it's such a big environment that possibly setting kids up to fail. And that's obviously not what we want to do. So I guess that is kind of the question. If you consider 3 grades in one school, 3 grades in another, and you can still have two kindergarten classes, 2 first grade, because right now you have 6 grades at Newbrook. So you could do still 2, 2, and 2. I don't know how big Townsend is, but you could possibly still do the same thing. I don't know. So.
Good.
So part of that comes back to a couple years ago, we had actually had this exact conversation about doing grade banding in that way. A lot of the concerns that came from, specifically from the community, involved the additional transitions between schools, having more than one kid. Now you may end up with 3 kids in 3 schools, for instance, which was a position I personally was going to be in. Part of how we got here was to look at that proposal and what are the best parts of that proposal. Like what, not just like, should we do grade banding or not? The question was, what about grade banding is really successful and how do we do that? And then what are the community's real concerns about this and how do we also address all of those concerns? Because it's bigger than yes or no, right? It's not just, should we do this thing or that thing? There's a lot of different sides at play and a lot of different personal interests. And the one campus model, to us, is the best solution to meet all of the pros from the administration about why these are great ideas, and also simultaneously take into consideration all of the but what abouts from the community. And that's really how we got to where we got.
And I will tell you, we did not start there. The fifth grade discussion took up many hours. Many hours. Right, Bill? Many hours.
Many hours.
And if we had all the space in the world and we had one big old campus, I think we would all agree that was probably a better option. But we don't. We have the resources that we currently have available to us, which are the money the taxpayers so graciously give us and the structures that we currently work out of. And in order to fit the best possible solution into what we have for available facilities, this was what we came up with. And we certainly had many hours of discussion, debate sometimes, actually a lot of debate about whether that would work. And we heard from the principal here at the high school and the superintendent about, what would it look like having the fifth grade here? Could that work? And I will tell you that was not their first suggestion either. And if you ask Bill, but he won't tell you this, he would tell you it's still not his favorite part of his plan. But I believe, and I think everybody else in the committee believes, that everything else, all the other good that we're going to be doing outweighs that piece of the plan.
And just as a side note to this, I know that when we had all these conversations about whether sixth grade should be part of the elementary school or the middle school, that there was a lot of real emotion involved in that decision from all sides. And that decision, after a couple years of doing this, has been very successful. And so I think that just goes to show that our administration is doing a really great job at meeting the needs of that group of students. And I do really believe that they will be just as capable of meeting the needs of fifth graders as they will of meeting the needs of sixth graders. And that being said, I know we keep saying this, it really is one campus and they are right there. And if there is any sort of collaboration with younger grades that can be going on, that the opportunity is better now for collaboration. And you're going to be having more people to collaborate with. I think that, as everyone keeps saying, if money was of no object and we just had a magic wand and could make anything happen, one campus would be one building and it would be brand new and the best technology and everything would be amazing. Maybe we'll get there. But right now, I think this is a pretty good solution.
Next question.
Shelley, I think you were next, and then if nobody else, we go ahead, Shelley.
Hi, so I'm Shelley Bostrom. I teach kindergarten at Newbrook, and I was just wondering if you would consider maybe splitting the primary grades to pre-KK and first, or did you look at numbers and that wasn't feasible or it didn't make sense? I just feel like first graders are still young and we could, collaborate a lot more, but I'm just wondering your thoughts about that.
So we did look at where to break the grades, pre-KK, pre-KK1, and really the decision was at the first grade level because of the kind of the early learning component before the elementary school. Those are the two, pre-K and K, those are the parent optional programs. Those are where we, again, students, we mentioned pre-K students that don't want to use public schools have options to go elsewhere. So they're kind of in a different place than our, first grade through 12th curriculum. So there was no good place. If we could put all of them in the same building, If someone wants to add a third floor to the building or, another, that would be great. We would love to have them all in the same place. That would be the ideal scenario. But we felt this kind of the split was the best we could do with what we had as far as the facilities.
And also to try to place transitions in a way that are sort of least impactful. Transitions can be real hard. That was one of the biggest concerns that we saw with feedback regarding that grade banding option. A couple years ago, one of the very biggest things was, but what about all these different transitions? And this allows sort of the early learning to happen in one place and then a transition to the rest of the campus. So anyway, that's how we got where we got.
Thanks, Shelley. Good question. I actually just to follow on to that, when you looked at it, obviously you looked at that pre-K to 1 and then probably a 2 to 5. Did the numbers just not work out, or was it how you were just talking about with having pre-K and K together and then splitting off 1? Was that the deciding factor?
It was as many kids on one campus as we could get was one of the biggest things. So if we pull first graders out now, they're not part of our one campus, right?
No, I understand. But in terms of numbers, but did the pre-K to 1 and then a 2 to 5 at Townsend just not make sense numbers-wise, or was it more about?
It defeats the one campus purpose that we're going for. So it goes back to that hot July or June night and the proposal that the public told us, again, back to that whole, before we started this conversation, we took the best parts of what we could find, and the one campus is what really made the most sense. So we wanted to get as many of our students onto one campus as we could. So it's not that we can't break them. If we're going to break them there, then we lose the benefits of the one campus. We lose the benefits of the availability of nurses and specialists. We lose any efficiencies that we would have gained from this that would have helped make it cost effective or to let those funds help support our immersive learning. So if we go to that grade banding model of whatever it was 4 years ago, we lose all of the benefits that we're projecting, which is unfortunate. And that's why we came to this, get as many students as we can on one campus. Consolidate our resources so that the students have the best access to the professionals that we employ. And we had to break somewhere because there just physically is not enough space to put everybody here. If we could, we would.
If we don't get it right, we won't have that problem. Everybody will be in this building. That's the thing.
The numbers keep dropping.
So the numbers keep dropping. I mean, you talk about moving, some of the responses was, I don't want to drive my kid all the way to Jamaica. Well, do Jamaicans want to drive all their kids to Newbrook? No. The demographics are different. I mean, we brought it up. Me and Lindsay went back and forth on this, being Newfane, Jamaica. I'm like, well, Jamaicans don't work in Brattleboro, Lindsay. They work in Manchester, Stratton. They go the other way. They take their kids in the other direction. She's like, my kid, I don't work that way. I don't work in Jamaica. I mean, we understand.
Gotcha.
Townsend is centralized.
Right.
We all meet in the middle. We're all giving up something, and we're all coming together as one. And the response is everybody was like trying to be in their own town. I understand that. I don't, their part of me still holds hard. I went to Jamaica school. I grew up there. But I'm willing to give up that, become part of a bigger community. If we all can't come together and be part of this bigger community and help our kids all together, there's no sense in having this district. You might as well give it all up. We eliminate everything and go to total school choice all the way across.
All right, Dan, well, I don't think that was the path.
No, that wasn't the path. That wasn't the path.
I'm going to cut you off right there.
Thank you. Thank you. Reel me in.
Yeah. All right,
You're done with everybody.
I know okay. Did anybody else have a question? Otherwise, we'll go to Chris for her second question. Chris.
So I just wanted to say the Immersive Center sounds lovely as long as you provide professional building. I know you're thinking about that as well. But I do have a question as far as we talked about having the money, if we had all the money in the world, we could do this, we could build one campus, et cetera, et cetera. It's going to take money to create that wonderful immersive learning center. What is the plan B if we don't get the funding? What happens then?
So, we don't accept defeat.
We are looking,
But it's a lot of money,
It is.
and we just said that we don't have a lot of money to bring everybody to one campus. So that's a big fear. Again, it's honestly, as an educator, it sounds amazing. I do QA-in, I've done all those things, and it's amazing. But if we can't actually make this happen, then what? Because we're still not spending the money.
So the financials are a thing that we've said that we, obviously haven't had a chance to dive deep into. We have had a lot of discussion regardless. And we are pretty comfortable with our ability to make this happen. We believe really strongly that this is what is best for our students, that this is an amazing opportunity. And I think that it's gonna be hard. It's a lot of work. But it's possible. And like Drew said, we don't accept defeat. We can make this happen. It is absolutely possible.
So,
Do I have numbers to hand out? No, but it is absolutely possible.
So, when I tell you we haven't had discussions about money, that means we have not gone through and created a program and put an employee price next to every program, and put a building cost in. That does not mean that we have not said, hey, will this work? And Bill's gonna nod his head because we've had that conversation. And with the amount of knowledge that our administration has about the budget and looking at this concept, we've had that conversation. Can we make this work? And Bill nodded his head. And we certainly had that high level discussion, but I can't lay a budget on the table. So we are very confident based on our conversations about can we make this work, that we can make this work. That's not down to the detail of 15 employees, 20 employees, 200 employees. But yes, we believe we can make this work, and our administration has nodded his head that he can make this work.
Time, resources, planning, you can make most anything.
At a tax neutral cost?
I'm not gonna make a promise. No.
He's not going on the record.
All right, I've got Heidi, and then.
But so to take that one step further, you build a budget around a $2 million project and the voters voted down.
Mhm.
That's out of Bill's hands, that's out of the board's hands. Will you still combine the grades and not do the immersion center? I mean, that's what we're asking really is, are you looking at doing steps? Because it is feasible that you're gonna find it's a huge number to put into the immersive learning center. Because I think for what your vision is, it's going to cost a lot of money. Maybe there's grant funds, maybe there's other things, but I think in reality, you have to talk about what happens if that number is too big. Will it be a phased project? Will it be off the table and you'll still come down to one campus without it? I mean, what are you thinking?
So now I understand the question better. I'm sorry. So I think this comes down to public education. And I believe that I believe the majority of the taxpayers and communities that we serve want amazing education for their kids. And I think if we go out and we educate the public as to what it is we're trying to build, that they will support what we're trying to build. Now, I have not done a scientific poll, but I know everybody here has been mingling and talking to the public, and we certainly had some public at our meetings. So far, it's overwhelmingly supportive of what we're trying to do. Now, we haven't put a number in front of them.
Right, and
So,
that's what I'm talking about. that number.
And if ultimately, if the public votes down our plan by voting down our budget, then it's up to this board to come up with a new plan. I don't think that means that our plan was bad. Maybe it means that it wasn't presented well. But I think we'd have to look at it at that point. I don't think it makes sense for us to come up with, if you defeat the budget, here's our plan. I think that's a poor approach to take. I'd rather just put it right out there, like, this is why we think this is important. And if there is a cost, if there is a year one cost to developing our emerging centers, I think it's worth it.
Well, I mean, when you look at the costs, I think you also have to keep in mind that there's going to be an ongoing cost, right? The materials cost. It's not going to be get it up and running and it should pay for itself. It's going to be this particular center is going to cost X amount of dollars a year, always in the budget. And we certainly don't want to pull away from allowing classes at Leland and Gray to keep kids at Leland and Gray because they want a choice of English classes or they want a choice of, more history classes. We want to make sure we're pulling too far in that direction and taking away from what's still here or at the elementary school.
Yes, we don't, and that was one thing we could discuss. There's if students are not interested in that learning environment, we still want to maintain the programs that they currently have. So it's not a
I think there's definitely population that you're going to have, but there's still kids that want to get as much as they can from Leland and Gray too. And so the tax rate that bottom line is a big deal every year. And so I feel like every time it comes to budget season, your numbers crunching and we're getting rid of a teacher and we're getting rid of this and we're getting rid of that. And now we're talking about potentially a few $1 million project that blows kind of everything you guys have been doing out of the water.
So the good news is what we've been doing hasn't been working. So when I have to stand in front of this camera and explain to the public why it is we're doing something different, I think everybody on the board can agree that what we've been doing, because we have to keep doing it, we have to keep having that conversation about which teacher do we lay off, what program do we remove, isn't working for us. So we need a new model. And I will gladly stand in front of this camera and say it's time for us to look at a new model. Because we can't just keep cutting. Our kids are losing opportunities. And I'm looking forward to the public meeting component. If the board says, yeah, this is what we want to do, let us kind of really dig in, get some of those details and go out and engage the public. Sitting in the town hall and visiting with people and saying, this is why we want to do what we want to do. And this is what it means to your kids. That's going to be the fun part of this project. I think that the public will be as excited as we are. Now, there'll be some people that are not happy. We expect that. And we're hopeful that, we've got enough good coming out of it that, it outweighs some of the negative things that people are feeling. But I think we're going to move forward. We'll get those details, and once we have a number.
When you have those public meetings?
Oh, yeah.
You'll do public meetings after you have.
After we have numbers, yep.
All right. I think I've got Bob, and then, I'm sorry, you've already spoken once, so. Go ahead, Bob.
Hey, how you guys doing? Just a couple of quick things I just want to throw out there. One, the fifth grade piece at Leland and Gray, I was asked the question of whether or not we could fit them at Leland and Gray. And from a strictly numbers perspective, the answer is yes, obviously, because at one point the building housed 450 kids. So number-wise, yes. Logistically, it's not that simple. For example, just a few implications I want to throw out there. If the current sixth graders are accessing the existing staff I have for exploratories, special education, and other types of services, that were the only staff that were added to Leland and Gray when the sixth grade came were the 2 classroom teachers. Everything else has been absorbed by existing people here. But that's stretched incredibly thin with that in mind. So with the fifth grade being moved, it's just something we have to consider is what additional staffing needs would have to be moved to account for that. So it's just one thing to lay out there. You guys would have to consider. It wouldn't just be the 2 teachers and nothing else. We have to have some other support staff added into that. And then the other piece I just want to talk about, the financial piece of all of this. The one thing that has yet, that you guys as a board have not taken on yet, is the Journey East component, which I know is a separate entity to this, but since that's sort of the inspiration for this project, from the immersion side, it is something that you have to think about how you're going to address that, the financial security of that moving forward. So I just want to remind folks that that's sort of hanging out there as well. Not that you don't know that, but I don't think, and I could be wrong, maybe that the intent of the committee is to replace this immersive learning, replace Journey East with the immersive learning. I don't know if that's their intention. I obviously would like to continue that program, and the presentation Jesse and I gave a few months ago is still present in my mind. So I just want to remind you guys of that as well from the financial side.
Thanks, Bob. All right, we have Patty and then Ryan.
I would like to have the committee keep in mind, which I'm sure they will, when they're going through the financial stuff, that we're hoping to gain students. When we gain students, that's money. So it will eventually support itself. That's the goal, I assume, from the committee. Also, I suggested at one of the meetings when we got our 5 minutes, and I suggested again that we start with a 0 budget, because this is a huge change that's requiring different funds from different places. You start with a 0 budget and add in things as you go through. Because there might be some things that you won't be using anymore, but they'll still have a line item and they'll still be budgeted. So that's just a suggestion. And you could do 5, 6, Leland and Gray as a band, and then 7 through 12 or something like that. I read some stuff today. But I'm no expert on grade still, so.
Thanks, Patty.
It's from, back to Bob for a minute, reminding everybody we're one district, so our employees don't have boundaries. They can walk across that road, and those teachers and specials from the other side of our campus can simply cross the street. It's magic. There's a crosswalk. They paint it fresh every single year. So there's no issue with the staff transition back and forth between the buildings. Because again, we're one district. There are no such thing as elementary school versus high school employees anymore.
All right, thanks, Drew. Go ahead, Ryan.
So I do like the immersive learning idea in general. Obviously, the budget, I think, is everybody's biggest concern. You obviously have room in this building to add a whole nother grade plus 2 teachers, because from what I've understood, you want to have 2 teachers per grade, or however you want to do it. Have you considered doing a smaller model in this building to see if that immersive learning is even something that people are interested in? Because you could spend $2 million on that project and you just don't, the kids aren't interested. I know you don't have the same resources that probably Jamaica with the nature and stuff, but when it comes to technology, anything like that, probably a smaller scale model that you obviously have room to fit a whole nother grade in the school. So, I mean, I'm not from the school, so I don't know how the building is laid out, but it seems like something could still be done, just on a smaller scale.
There's things that are being done. So the Bob actually did a presentation at our last board meeting about some of the project-based learning opportunities that they're already working on. So the teachers are already getting professional development and starting on kind of that style of project-based learning. We did not look at, is there space in this building to build an immersion center? That wasn't actually a consideration that we did look at directly. Mostly, I think because, looking at all the resources we had, it didn't seem to make sense because we do have a campus that is, pretty well suited for it. But we truthfully did not look at the possibility here, so that's certainly something we could consider if there's any opportunities in this building, but we didn't directly look at that.
Before we move on, I just wanted, I've heard a couple numbers being floated around, and I wanted to make sure that everybody understands those. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we've talked about $2 million or $3 million. I've heard those numbers a few times now, so just didn't want that to get reported in the paper that West River is planning on spending between.
That's a make-believe number, yes. No.
So those were fictitious numbers. Please do not report that in the paper. Thank you.
Thank you for
Good
clarifying.
clarification.
We will get that number though, if the board wishes us to.
Right, understood. Good. Sorry.
Well,
Two
either
of
one.
you.
You can go first if you want.
All right, and then we'll go to Shelley.
Okay. Now, I'm hearing from, what I just got from Bob there is it's gonna be a little harder for them to move the 5th graders up here other than, yes, we have space. A couple of times I've heard you guys say, you wanna keep the most amount of kids up here, and I understand where your concept is there. But you're saying they'll have access to a nurse. They'll have access to specials. They'll all be centralized. Okay? Our kindergartners still get music. If a kindergartner needs speech and language, we have to send somebody down there. PE, OT, all have to go down there. So why would it hurt you so much to say, let's put the 1st graders down with pre-K and K? They'll still have access to a nurse, because I know we're not leaving our kindergartners down there without a nurse. There has to be, we have students in the building. Legally, we have to have a nurse in there X amount of hours, because we have students in. We're still gonna have to send the music teacher down. We're still gonna have to send whatever other specials that we send down to the kindergartners down. So why send a music teacher down there for 1 kindergarten class when you can send them, or 2 kindergarten classes, when you can send them down for 2 kindergarten classes and 2 1st grade classes and make a full day out of it in the one building, instead of having them go here and then come back up here, because now you're paying twice as much travel in one day. And like I said, if you're gonna have every person that does this campus that's a special, and when I say special, I don't just mean like music and that. I mean they have, their speech and language, PE, all, PT. They have to travel down there. So if they're going to travel down there for 3 kids, speech and language person goes down there for 2 kids, wouldn't it be better if they spent more time down there and did all 4 kids that on their IEP, it's mandatory that they get these services, that we're providing those services to a larger number instead of just putting somebody down there for 2 kids for half an hour. And then they have to come back up here.
Okay. I think we got it. So
You got the
more
idea, right?
time.
Because I kept hearing, they'll have access to a nurse here. They'll have access to this. They better have access to it. They're still our kids.
We'll look into it for you. I'll get
Okay.
you an answer for the next meeting.
Thanks, Ken. Mike, and then Shelley.
So, back to what I said earlier, it sounds great on surface level, right? So then it comes down to, can we afford it, which is not an uncommon theme, right? So, I'm wondering, Bill, I'm gonna put you on the hot seat. You might not have the answer now, but I'm sure you can get it. One is, do you know when ESSER ends? And 2 is, do you know if we could fund something like this through ESSER and then make it not have to cost our taxpayers?
Answer to the first question is FY '24. And 2/3 of ESSER has already been spent. So you're only looking at 1/3 of ESSER.
Right.
And 1/3 of ESSER of the proportion that West River would be allocated. So you have time, probably have less money than you imagine.
Could we get more ESSER is what I'm saying.
There is no more ESSER that has been allocated. And then the third, I guess, is, yeah, I think that with what you're talking about, the rules under ESSER are very possible to do both physical infrastructure and investment in professional development, as Chris was talking about, personnel, as the long-term planning committee was talking about, yes. I think there's a way that money could be made to fit the goals for ESSER. I just don't think it's as much as you're thinking.
Yeah.
But, yes.
Because
short answer is yes.
Yeah, because I mean, we as a board and a community, I mean, if my recollection's correct, and I could be slightly off, but I remember last year we bought down the tax rate with part of our surplus.
Yes.
So if we did nothing, my understanding is we're probably like $600K in the hole going into budget season. It was around that type of a number.
If you changed nothing.
Right.
Year over year.
Right.
Yes.
So, okay.
That'd be about correct.
All right. Shelley?
Thanks. So I'm wondering, and I know other people have asked me, what is the timeline for this to happen? Are you thinking this is going to happen for the next school year or maybe the year after? When are you thinking about implementing a change if it passes?
We would like to see the changes happen as soon as possible. Understanding that it may not happen immediately. I would like to think that we can start making, improvements in our personalized education of our students now. We've discussed as a committee things, and I certainly the administration has already looked at things to start breaking down the silos that are currently in our buildings and bringing this together as more of a single community, single campus model. So I would say the changes could start happening now, and it would take as long as it would take in order to implement, with a goal to be as soon as possible. That's very vague. My goal is September of next year. Bill's goal, a little different. So.
Please, yes.
I just wanted to say that I really appreciate the transparency of communication that I and my colleagues have been able to have with the long-term planning committee over the past 4 or 5 months. I think Drew's been very generous of mentioning a few times where we are coming at things from different thoughts, but we don't have to hide that. We get to discuss them. I think the long-term planning committee has been very upfront in looking for positives in things that have been created under my watch before, and been very kind about that, but also have been very comfortable being like, yeah, we're not going down that path. And but I appreciate the honesty and I appreciate the transparency, because the middle of our Venn diagram is all about students, and I appreciate the process. Since Drew mentioned that again, I just thought that was for you all.
Thanks, Bill. No, that's great. I'm glad it's been a very,
disagreements are how you
absolutely. Any great thing is achieved through potential conflict and discussion and back and forth and compromise.
We're all still friends at the end of it.
Yeah.
That's pretty remarkable.
Yeah. And you created something great. Shelley, did that answer your question?
No.
There's one.
But I hope that you realize that, educators aren't contracted to work in the summer, but we do work in the summer, and that you'll give us some time to prepare. And I mean, that's a big consideration, just to have the time for what, it's a big undertaking, and we have to have time.
We hear you.
Some numbers though.
Scotty's got his hand up
Scotty,
now.
for real? All right. Go ahead, Scotty.
Hey, you guys. I've been listening to this conversation. I really, I wanted to say a couple of things. I jotted down a couple of things. First of all, this is a very hardworking group that you guys have solicited to take this on. And I attended 2 meetings, and I really love their idea of having 2 strands in a building. We did PD today at Newbrook, and Jamaica teachers came as well. And it's really, really nice to see people in the same room that have the same job, that really understand the standards that they're trying to address in their classrooms. And there would be a lot of efficiencies with that as well. There'd be planning efficiencies, so 2 kindergarten teachers taking on a project together. There would be PD efficiencies, professional development. So when we set out to learn new things together, oftentimes it would be really nice to be able to do it in grade levels, because that is the application that we would be going forward with. And that's for training purpose, but also for planning in terms of making projects with children that make sense, and using creativity and 2 voices in order to get there. I love the immersion focus as well, and now that I'm at JDS, I think that that's a beautiful site for something like that. It's an incredible campus that we own up there, and I wouldn't want to see it used in any other way other than to better the lives of the students that we serve. I do have to say that I'm just a little torn about the Newbrook campus, and as I said at the meeting, I'm personally invested in it, so you got to take it with a grain of salt. But we invested $330,000 and paid it off, and we have an air-to-air heat pump system that provides us with cooling in warm weather and warming in cool weather, and we don't burn any fossil fuels on campus, and we paid it off. And I think there's something there, and I'm not sure exactly how to handle that, but I do hope that as we move forward as a group, and I know we will move forward as a group, and we'll figure it out. I hope that we'll consider more than just building capacity when we look at the way that we're grouping children. I think that the K-2 and 3 to 5 bands that are present in PD, in curriculum, in materials, that we would allow those to enter the conversation. And Drew, I totally agree with you. 3 years ago it was a nightmare, but I think part of that was that we, as a whole, hadn't come to terms with the fact that we were a whole. We had just merged, and now that we really are starting to understand that we are a whole, maybe we could look back at those ideas from that meeting, and maybe that would be more attractive to people now. I mean, I do worry about people in West Jamaica getting their 3-year-olds to the Newbrook campus, and I wonder if maybe taking the middle kids, the 3 to 5 kids, or some other semblance like that, and leaving them at the Newbrook campus, maybe that would make more sense. I'm not sure, but I am certain that the people that are working on this are trying their best and have your kids in mind, and the best for them. I really do want to say that I think in terms of actually the nuts and bolts of educating children, I think that we settled on that 6 to 8 because it really did make sense as educators. And now that we've seen it enacted, it really is working great, like you guys said. So I just hope that we could consider where we're drawing the lines and make sure that we're not just doing it based upon building capacity. Thank you.
Thanks, Scotty. All right. Wow.
Get one more in the back there.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ryan.
Kind of piggybacking on Scotty did mention kind of something that I mentioned earlier. Is the transition more, I guess there's a couple points. Is the transition more for a convenience to the parents going K-2, let's say at Newbrook, and then you have 3 through 12 right on this campus? Or is it you worry about kids transitioning, because to me, you go 3 grades, so K to 2, it's like a mini graduation for that child. They've accomplished something. They've spent 3 grades, they're moving to the next school. Then you spend 3 to 5, that's like another graduation type thing. I personally grew up with K to 2, 3 to 5, 6 to 8, 9 to 12, 4 different buildings. If you have 5 to 12 in one building, and especially with no additions, that child's spending 8 years, same walls, same hallways. At some point, is that boredom gonna start to happen to a child by the time they hit high school? I know it's a different level, but they've spent already 4 years in one school, and now they gotta spend another 4 years just at a different level, but it's still the same campus. So it's also looking at keeping a kid's interest, especially that young. I mean, you gotta keep keeping kids engaged, whether building, offering different things. But I do think, it is, I guess, is it more children or is it more of a parent's convenience to put everybody here? I think the education, if we focus on that, no matter what building you're on, if the education is still there, I don't think it matters what building, as long as you're making sure that it is a solid education for the grades.
I don't have anybody online.
Not a question, just a comment to bounce off of Shelley's a little bit is, I know, Drew, you want to do it next September and that would be a whirlwind. I just ask you to take, you don't have to take a long time, but take the time to really, like you said, to do it right and make sure that it's all done and the teachers are prepared, the students, the families, everybody is prepared for it to happen. Because I think if you rush into it, you could lose a lot of the wow factor or the power behind what you're trying to create.
The gentleman back here was mentioning boredom for the children, but that's why we're creating this immersion center, and the kids won't be just here. There'll be so much more for these kids that I don't think boredom is anything to even think about.
Trying to get rid of that.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Sorry, Ryan, just 1 second, make sure nobody else.
Just to comment back is, I like the immersive learning idea. I think it was me. That idea, I think, is still using Jamaica as that. I think it's taking the 3 schools that you have within this 10-minute stretch, and I think it's that more trying to have a better configuration of a good utilization, because also I know Newbrook is a fairly new school. So if your plan is to eventually do K through 12 on this campus, you kind of, in a way, wasted taxpayer money on a building that is now just a pre-K, and you may not even have 20 kids in it. So now you've got a building that really will, has had a lot of money put into it, spent, that could end up going to waste, kind of. I don't know what the backup plan for Newbrook if that happens. It sounds like this plan is something that you want to get rolling, but could end up with a building that's kind of useless if it's not utilized. I don't know if that's even been a thought of what will eventually happen to that campus, that building in itself.
I don't want to overstep, but maybe I could take a guess at what we could do to maybe potentially utilize that building, like WCSU potentially could be relocated there, and that would be money for us. So yeah, I'm sure these guys have already thought of that, but that's just I would think a potential solution.
We just also think that our immersion programs are going to be so popular that they're going to spill into that building. I think that we have amazing campuses, and but rather than trying to bite off all of it at once, we didn't put that into the original if we told you you're building 2 immersion centers. It's an amazing campus, and we're not writing that campus off. We would absolutely think that what we're going to create is going to be so powerful and so meaningful that we'll be expanding that into that area. And we have some other ideas as to how to better utilize those resources. But
Don't forget, we also get revenue off that campus.
we do.
Plus, we're all getting a break on all our buildings with our electric bills.
We're not giving it up, Ken. Don't worry.
You can't go.
No.
You got a contract for 20 years and we're not, what would it be, 5 years into it?
Yeah, no.
I think we have some notes. We've all been taking notes, so I think we've got enough information to come back and answer the specific questions that were asked, and certainly address some questions that I think we have now. So you guys have created some questions for us.
More.
At least that's what's getting written on my pieces of paper.
Chicken scratches.
Perfect. All right, before we close out, did anybody else have any other comments, questions? Don't want to shut anybody off.
The link's still open, right?
The link is still open to our responses, so feel free to, if something comes to you later, to let us know through that.
And we'll continue to look at that. So if you've got new people, new comments,
Add to.
All right. Well, thank you very much, folks. Our next board meeting is on.
Yeah, we have one thing.
No, I know. I just wanted to say our next board meeting is on September 20th.
Yes.
So there will be plenty of time for these folks to take it back, digest it, answer the questions, and then be fully prepared for that meeting. So no, I was not skipping it. Sorry. Not jumping the gun.
Okay. We'll be asking you guys to vote that night to move forward with more or not. I think that's what our plan is going to be.
Yes.
So when you put the agenda together, we will want the board to give us direction.
If you put stuff together, can the board have it before the meeting, just in our own board email, so we can digest it a little more before the meeting?
See what we can get out.
Yeah, I mean, just, since we're all being transparent, so I don't get back till the 12th evening. Lori Garland doesn't get back till the 11th. So you have to be realistic about what they can accomplish without the director of finance and
Sure enough.
superintendent. Fair enough. So they're an amazing team, but there's going to be things that are going to need us to work on. I blocked out time when I get back, but we might not be able to get absolutely everything in if we have to have another meeting on the 27th. That's what we'll do. We can do that,
So Bill won't be available till the 14th, because for 2 days, he's gonna have to catch up on everything this.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Realistically.
We'll still be on the top of the pile. Though, so
Exactly.
we're good.
And I think at this
Yeah, we
point,
know
we're
what
just
happens
going
on
to
the pile, though.
be taking action on moving forward. That's
Yeah.
literally all we're doing is, do we want to move
We're not going to
forward?
build a budget for you.
Right,
before
yeah,
the 12th.
exactly.
No.
We're not, yeah. We
Basically-
want to make sure that we're not wasting the administration's time and our time. So, yeah. All right. Great. Thank you very much. And yes, moving on to the policy C5 weapons firearms. Warning.
So this policy was brought to us by the administration. It's a required policy. We do have one in effect already. The major change, or minor change that this one has is under sanctions, the second paragraph, where it says any student in grades pre-K to 12 who brings a non-firearm to school shall have an incident reviewed by the principal. The principal, in consultation with the superintendent, may recommend the student to the school board for an expulsion hearing. Without that paragraph, the way the old policy reads, any violation goes to before the board as an expulsion hearing. So this just gives the administration a little more flexibility for minor issues, minor offenses.
And we don't have to bring a kindergartner up in front of the school board. Don't laugh, it's happened.
Mm-hmm.
You're looking for a motion to warn it? That's together? So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All right. Seeing none, we do have somebody in Zoom land now, so we'll.
Sorry about that, Al and George.
No, it's okay.
she can go
So-
first and then.
Yep, there we go. So Emily, we'll take your vote and then we'll do thumbs up? Okay.
Yes,
And,
thank you.
Thumbs up for everybody in here. Anybody opposed? I'm seeing none. Okay, motion carries, unanimous. And I don't think we have anything else to cover, so I'll entertain that final motion.
Move to adjourn. Give one handout in the audience.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Ryan.
So, on a completely different topic that I was hoping to get to, but I know this one took a lot. So, according to your policy, especially regarding children with the masks, the first 10 instructional days, that puts you on the 15th. You're not meeting again until the 20th. How are you voting on anything after the 15th? Are you extending that through that week and then making a new motion on the 20th? Because the first 10 instructional days put you in the middle of the week and you're not meeting until after.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead, Bill.
So, based on the motion that was made, if they hit 80% of eligible students, there's not another vote. It just happens. Doesn't make any difference if it
Well,
happens.
this is the school board meeting for the elementary too, correct?
Yes.
So I do have a lot of counter arguments, but I know people want to go home tonight. But I know
So
it's
they would
late.
have to change the motion that they made last time?
And I would be looking to request to a reconsideration of that motion based on data that supported, because I would like quickly that the state made these guidelines, but if there's anybody, staff members who can reach out to the state and actually have them provide data to prove that what they are saying, they can support their decision, especially when it comes to masking children under the age of 18. Because there's plenty of data that supports the other. So if a staff member could reach out to the state to show that they are the reason why they're doing this.
So that type of action would have to be a direction from the board to me, very specific, and that action would be taken. But you are correct that it wouldn't happen in a public meeting until the 20th. So
I would assume we're gonna revisit the COVID discussion at that meeting anyway.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think there's, we're probably not gonna discuss it at.
The 15th is a Wednesday, so
Yeah.
it would be.
That's what I was.
It'd be a Thursday and Friday where it wouldn't have and Monday, because it'd be Monday night. So it'd be 3 student days where the decision could be revisited if they didn't meet prior.
Yep. And I think that's probably what we'll do. All right. I will entertain, somebody probably already made a motion to adjourn.
We were adjourned 5 minutes ago.
Who made the motion?
I made the motion.
Who seconded it? Leanne seconded it?
Sure,
All right.
sure.
You did now.
Somebody down there.
I did
All
now.
right.
We'll put it
Starting with you, Emily.
Aye.
Everybody else in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. We adjourn.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Yeah.